Frank Greeff, who went from grinding in the kitchens of Sydney as a chef to co-founding a business called Real Base with his brothers, engineering an incredible $180 million sell. He's back in the trenches with a business called Kinso AI and is also leading a campaign to raise $1 million for children's cancer through his cookbook, Eat with Purpose. And he's also challenging the status quo on how founders manage their mental wealth and equity. Even more impressive has been Frank's incredible honesty and bravery in challenging the appalling CGT changes being forced through Parliament by the Gen Z hating Labor government. Frank created the Albo co-founder meme, which went massively viral and has been leading a rearguard action against the changes, which will, of course, destroy jobs and hope for millions of young Australians while lining the pockets of millionaire Labor politicians. Frank, you've been outspoken and brilliant on this topic. What were your first thoughts when you heard the budget?
Firstly, thanks for having me. So I kind of first became privy to it maybe 2 days prior. I think I was a little bit late to the punch. And I remember it was my brother messaged me on Saturday and he was like, have you heard about what's going on? And it actually kind of rocked my world, if I'm honest, for 48 hours. And it was from a few different levels. I think the first one was just I'm very close to kind of the business ecosystem here in Australia. And yes, I may be, slightly biased to the business types that I'm with and surrounded by. Certainly, it's not all just tech. It's it's e-com, it's retail. There's a pretty big mix and makeup. But I think the biggest thing for me is meeting a very wide variety of founders here in Australia, and just celebrating ambition and seeing especially the young founders in Australia. And getting heartbroken every time they move overseas, and go, I'm going to go, let's say move to San Fran or whatever. Every time I hear that, it kind of broke my heart. And so the first thing that came to my mind was, I feel like we've been having this incremental momentum in the right direction. The capital markets, the VC markets in Australia had been growing. More and more young people that I've been meeting were keen to get into the world of founding business. And so the first thing that came to my mind is I was like, holy shit, is this going to kind of rip that out of Australia? And we have a few things, I guess, going against us, but we have a lot of great things in our favor. And I was just, immediately okay, is this going to stop? Is this going to stop the momentum? And they're going to put a pause on that.
So I want to jump in and say, you created this meme and the meme became the meme and was replicated by a huge number of people in tech, but also Albo himself commented on your meme. I thought in a very, it didn't cover him in glory. He basically said he was just happy to look so nice on everyone's memes that included him as a co-founder. But how did it feel to see that meme go bananas? And what was the craziest moment that happened through all of that memeing?
I guess for absolute clarity, I tell you what, ever since being dragged through the mud of the media, I've become a stickler to make sure every piece of nuance and detail is shared. I should start by saying, so we didn't create it. We actually had an early founding member of our new product, Kinso. He came into the office that day to launch onto the product. And he shared us with this idea, hey, I'm going to do this post. And we're oh, that's awesome. We'll get behind it and we'll do a bit of a call out. And so that, that kind of helped certainly supercharge it. In terms of the craziest moments, it was probably getting those. I started getting messages about how this is kind of ricocheting in the politicians' world, and we're getting reached out to by so many media establishments, traditional media, hearing from whichever politicians going, oh my gosh, this thing is going crazy in the four walls of Canberra, and that was kind of that was a little bit weird and wonderful. But to be honest, it makes sense because social media these days is a very very powerful thing, and it can reach a lot of people. And let's be honest, a lot of media is trying to cling on, is trying to hold on to their once glory days, and so something that's going off on social media, they'll certainly jump onto and grab to make sure that their stories are relevant.
So I think one of the great myths of this budget is that it's a budget that helps young people and is bad for older people. When I think if you look in reality, pretty much everything that older rich people have has remains from superannuation to grandfathering in CGT to grandfathering in negative gearing. So older people keep everything. And I put we're not that old, especially you, Frank. So one of the great myths is that this hurts rich people. Actually, if you look at you and all the other great founders who have come out sort of opposing, so Paul Bassett, Lee Jasper, they've they've all had their exits. You've had your exit. You've got your monies. It doesn't actually hurt you. Yes, you've got other businesses coming, but you'll be fine. It's the younger founders. And I think that's what's really caught on. I've seen so many young founders use your meme. These are 20, 25-year-old kids who haven't had a chance to buy a house, can't buy shares because they can't afford. They're founding a business with zero cost base, and they're the ones getting smashed. And that's something that's what your meme has done so well to point out.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I was most nervous about, I guess, being vocal about it was exactly that. Was kind of like, and that's kind of where the narrative ended up going. But it was like I was in the prior to these rules, I was able to grow this business, pay shitloads of tax along the way, and a big old check at the end of it. But it was fine. And so and the reality to what you're saying is like, anybody who's made their wealth, no problems, because one, the people who've made their wealth can always figure out a structure, or alternatively, like the sad truth is, people who've made their wealth might be like, okay, great, investing in businesses or investing in shares is no longer the optimal vehicle. Okay, great, no worries, I'll just park it all in my primary place of residence, which is 0% tax. Great, no dramas, and I'll outperform. It's the younger people. It's either the next generation of like hyper ambitious who want to build the big business, or just like the everyday business builders, as well as just like regular people. Like one of the things I think is completely out of touch with this kind of reform is all the young people I have spoken to, prior to this, whenever I spoke about property, it's kind of like, oh, look, property is out of reach.
You jumped in, or I'll say you jumped out, put your head up, made some comments that I thought were very reasonable, not dramatic. I'm on a podcast where I know what dramatic comments sound like. Your comments were not dramatic. They were very reasonable. I presume you've had some media exposure in the past because you did a good job of exiting your business and you're doing another new nice business, but not this level of exposure. I mean, tell me, in one sentence, were you shocked by the level of hate that headed your way as a result of this?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You know what I mean? Like, to your point, I was like, I always like to think I'm I'm a good guy. Like I spend so much time campaigning and helping younger generations. I talk at universities like every few weeks. And then, to just get get these media places to clip up tiny bits of what I'm saying and then get dragged through the mud. And then, I've had a fair shitload of people just like sliding into my DMs or sending me emails or whatever, just like, I won't say the profanities.
It's horrible, right? I mean, I think it's very easy for people in general to misunderstand that someone that is saying something publicly and maybe has had some business success is governed by the same set of human emotions, generally speaking, as they are. And, they just forget that you're also a person. I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is there was an article in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Oh, yeah.
That I would say, I mean, I've had a hatchet job done on me in a very much not dissimilar way, I'll say, without going into detail. But you got a hatchet job done on you is how I would describe it. It disparaged you for making $180 million and not giving it to your staff and having the audacity to have a view on taxation. I think it juxtaposed you with Tim Doyle, and Tim is a great guy. I know Tim well, but you both built businesses and you both built them in a way that worked for each of your businesses at the time. So, created this attempted conflict in the startup scene. Presumably you felt that article deeply misrepresented your views, but also was a personal attack? Or am I more upset about it on your behalf than you are about it?
No, I'd say that's a very, very fair characterization. I think, so I received maybe on Wednesday last week was like a list of questions from the journo, and immediately I was like, okay, there is a hit piece coming for me, because it wasn't like, I want your take on these, these.
So you knew what was happening.
Oh, I knew it was about to come. And because the questions are very aggressive, the questions were all related specifically to me and the context of like the business. Because I'm quite a transparent person. So, I've had people before ask, how much money did you make on the exit, or how many shareholders were, and I'm very like transparent with going like, okay, this is how many shareholders were, blah, 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 blah. So I knew it was going to be dragging me through the mud for sure.
Can we go into a bit of detail, because the intimation, and I think we both found it really unfair for multiple reasons, but just to get the facts on the table, because they weren't really, they were almost misled, maybe unintentionally, but misled the reader into thinking that you didn't share anything, you kept it for yourself. But you obviously had, not only do you have co-founders, but you actually were very, very generous with equity. So can you talk, how many people got equity? What was the size of the business? Call it a couple of years after, or a couple of years before you sold it. So obviously your business did grow a lot towards the end, and you don't, like if someone started a week before you sold the business, no one gives them equity. So why don't you talk a bit about the evolution of the business and just how you did give your team a lot of valuable equity.
And why those, I read that it was 7 people, but why those 7 people, like when they got equity, and why was it those 7 and not 100?
For sure. So this is the, when I got those questions, this is the kind of nuance that I made sure to put in there, because it changes the entire dynamic of the story. So the context is when we launched our first business, myself and my 2 brothers, for 5 years, we're a pure, services-based company. Then we shifted into tech. Now, the early stage team members that were with us in that business, we gave out equity to, multiple of them. We also had, and of course, this is the kind of stuff that doesn't make it to the story, where in those early days, you say to a team member, look, we don't have much money. We can offer you one of 2 things. Here's a 10 grand pay rise, or alternatively equity, but just note it's high risk. And multiple employees said, no, I'm all good. I'll take that 10 grand pay rise, right? But that doesn't make as good a hit piece on us.
Yeah, lots of people ask for that.
That doesn't sound very negative to me, so don't include that.
Yeah.
And then from there, we grew to a team of about 40 people. And what actually happened is we got approached by our largest competitor, and our largest competitor said, "Hey, we want to do a merger." Now that business was 8 times the size of us, and so we went from 4 million revenue to 38 million overnight. And so what happened is you go from my brothers and I, we own the great majority of the company, to now we own 50% between us and the early equity shareholders that we brought on. And so when that moment happens, the merger, I was a majority shareholder at 15%, and as you guys know, you don't control the decisions of giving out. You don't just give out shares. You go to a board structure, present it, It's not that easy anymore. But also from that merger point, so that's at that point of merger, we then had 10 shareholders. From merger, which is 40 to 350 people overnight, within 12 months, we'd started the acquisition process.
And those staff are not your staff. Like, they became your staff, but you've got another 300 staff whose equity structure you were not responsible for, who came with another business who had nothing to do with you except competing against you prior to the businesses
and also
coming
wouldn't
together.
have got much equity anyway, because it's so late, and they would have got a couple of, as in between them, a couple of points. So we're talking low single digits.
But that's all right though, because we can, I do want to give credit to Tim and the others at Eucalyptus who did set up a structure to from the start to give out all of this equity. But it's did
Tim give that much?
I think
a quarter of Frank's staff had equity, which is a very high
that's
ratio.
a good point.
A quarter of the original team.
Yeah, had, or probably more were offered equity.
More would have been offered. So probably half would have been offered and a quarter took. That's up there with anyone in Australia. So the whole framing that Frank and his brothers were villains for not giving equity is just fundamentally wrong. It's just a complete stuff up.
And also misunderstands capitalism, capitalism is very unpopular in this age.
Even forgetting that's an extremely generous equity scheme.
I agree with you. And so I'm not really one for conspiracy theories, but you might be. And so, do you think, why was that article written about you? It was a very strange article that was very consistent with the government's talking points and very nasty about you.
I wrote pretty quickly, this looked like a Labor. Labor does this better than anyone in the world almost. This had to come from a chief of staff or from the massive Labor team.
It might have. It wouldn't have. Well, we shan't say it had to, but it might have.
Maybe Dan Andrews freelancing a little bit for the federal guys. Not much to do these days.
You got Dan Andrews into the conversation. And so you just, do you have conspiracy theories on it? Do you think it was just mean? Do you think it was clicks? You have a view on this?
Oh, look, I won't lean on to the conspiracy theories in preparation that this will get chopped up. So I couldn't tell you, but I think the last piece of nuance that was very cleverly left out of my statement was we started the business when we were 20 years old. You know, I was a chef. My brothers had never had jobs or bosses.
That's an
and we had
amazing
no idea.
story, Frank. Like that is an incredible story.
We had no idea what it was. Like, so one, you know, people have asked before, like, how come you didn't raise capital? You bootstrapped. We just didn't even know there were capital markets. You know, like we didn't, you know, and it's like, how come you didn't have a sophisticated ESOP? And it's like, we didn't even know what ESOP was. So when we gave out shares, it would just be like straight equity and you just transfer shares to that person. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so people were working with us for a year and
Absolutely.
It's like, here is equity, and we didn't know anything different or better. And so the key is like, okay, you learn a bunch of lessons and then you go like, well, what do I take from those lessons to apply to the next? And that's why the critical piece for me was like, in our new business, I know about an ESOP. You know, I know all that stuff. And now it's like 10 out of the 11 people, and soon to be 11, have ESOP, and you have all the right structures. And so I think the key difference between myself and Tim Doyle, apart from a couple of zeros because they did an incredible job, is like they were backed by VC. And so when you get backed by VC, like the VC is like, okay, we want to make 10 to 15%, part of this is an ESOP program. There's a bit of guidance that happens. In our world, there was none guidance.
And Tim has been around the block. Tim was around the block with Koala, which was also VC backed.
Yeah.
You came from a place that many founders come from, which is I'm young, I'm new. I don't want to say unsophisticated. I'm just new to this world. You know, I'm unsophisticated in this world of
But it's
money.
not even that. We wanted to give equity for ages here. It took us probably 6-7 years to get it done because it costs like $100,000 to get it set up.
So certainly back then, set up.
We now give a chunk of staff, but it took a long time. So it's not as if you can just click your fingers and do it either. It's we got to wrap up, Frank. You've been amazing. And just Adir talked about something called anti-truth about a month ago. And this is a classic case. And not only have you been tarred completely wrongly, but like we've met before where you were raising money for your charity, which was incredible. So you've been not only an amazing founder, but incredible charitable person. So to be tarred like this is just so incredibly unfair. It's such anti-truth. I'm really disappointed in Swanee for writing the article because I like him and I think he does a good job. But I think he's been briefed here by evil forces, inverted commas, who have an agenda to push. And I think you're the innocent victim of trying to do the right thing, and this is what happens.
Well, good on you. And hopefully, you know, we met because I just sent you a message on LinkedIn feeling bad for you. And hopefully you get those messages as well of support because we live in a democracy and it's every citizen's right to be able to speak freely about things that the government is doing. And you were not even abusive or insulting. God, I see all that all over social media.
Yeah, that's my LinkedIn page.
You weren't even that. And so I would just really encourage you not to be dissuaded by this and to keep speaking because I think your voice is measured and it's smart and it's pretty young and it comes from a place of personal experience or what is it called now? Like my own truth or something. And so I really would encourage you to keep doing that, Frank. I think it's really terrific.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Cheers, legends. Have a good one.